Hello and welcome to another episode of the Personal Transformation Experience podcast. My name is David Brand.
And my name is Maureen Brand.
Today we decided to focus on this idea of getting emotionally hijacked. If you're not familiar with the term, emotionally hijacked has to do when some past experience, maybe a past trauma, comes to bear in a present moment and hijacks you emotionally. And I think we were talking about this earlier, and I know, Maureen, you shared with me, there's three basic ways that you'll know that you're being emotionally hijacked.
Right. What are the three ways you know you're being emotionally hijacked? Well, the top three for me, and I think this goes true for everybody, you know, we may not recognize it in the moment because we're getting emotional.
Right.
But I know for me, I start to feel like in my gut, like right here, I start to feel like I'm getting angry or I'm getting worked up or I get defensive. I feel a little bit defensive, and it's not like this huge feeling. It's very subtle. So it's tricky because you may not realize it. And now you're responding in a defensive way, or you feel you're getting yourself a little bit hyped up, and you find yourself like kind of on the attack.
The example that comes to mind more vividly for me is the other night when you were talking about writing a business plan, and and I asked you what your goals were, and the first thing you said was to make $100,000, and I bristled at that, and I thought initially that I was triggered by that because I was thinking, well, is it just about the money, or do you really want to help people? Because I guess I have some trigger in me that if you are going to do kind things for people that are kind of altruistic, that you shouldn't think about money. But that I get it now that I've had to sit on that for a few days.
Yeah.
That
I was just making goals.
You know, we're not able to do things for free, right? You have a skill.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm still paying student loans.
You have an ability, right? You learn these things. You paid for an education, right? You deserve to have an income for that.
Right.
We deserve to get paid for what we do, whether it helps people advance their own lives or improve their child's lives or their lives. So I guess I had this idea in my head that, you know, we should give something like, how do we put a price on helping other people? But unfortunately, everything costs something in life, or what, maybe not unfortunately, but everything costs something, right? We can't, you know, nobody's just going to give us food, and nobody's just going to give us electricity, right? So I have to, but what triggered me about that is, as a child, right, I never got to think about making money, right? I was always in survival mode. It was always about how do I get through today? How do I get to tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't know some days if I was going to have enough to eat and not go to bed hungry. And I can't wrap my head around this idea that I deserve to be wealthy, or I deserve to have plenty, or I deserve not to be in survival mode.
Right.
You know, and that is a scary thing because that's a trauma response, right? To somebody. So forget about the 8 boats, right? Let's talk about you and I, because we're in this relationship together. You don't 8 houses, 8 boats. That's not.
Well, it's not even that. It's, I mean, and $100,000 is really not a lot of money.
It's not a lot of money.
Let's go back to the triggers. Like, why? How do you know you're being hijacked? Right? I don't know if I finished going through
so in the moment,
to me, the top 3.
We were both emotionally hijacked.
Right.
That's what I was trying to get at last night when we were talking about this.
Right.
We were both emotionally hijacked, and that's what led to an escalation. It led to raising voices. It led to anger and hostility. And so this is the point we want to get across to people, is to recognize, right, the things that tell you you've been emotionally hijacked. And then we're going to talk about how to call time out with your partner.
Right. So I think first is recognize that you're starting to become defensive, and your language is changing, and you're kind of like a little pissy, right? I mean, I was like not in a curiosity space.
Right. Your tone.
I was in a judgment space.
You got louder.
So I switched from curiosity to judgment and blame. And I didn't even realize I had done it at first.
Right.
So but because it was so subtle, And I started to raise my voice, and then I started to get so you'll feel that in your gut. You'll start to notice you notice that your language changes, the way you're thinking changes. You're not curious anymore. You're not being non-judgmental. You are now judging what the other person's saying, and your rapid heart rate might happen. You might start to feel a swell of anger and fear or anxiety, right? And so be aware how that changes, and it could be a very subtle change, but it can build very quickly because that change comes in and just kind of sweeps in without you really being aware. Like I wasn't aware, but now in retrospect, thinking back about our conversation, I can see how the moment I changed, the moment I started to get annoyed or irritated or not being curious and becoming defensive, and then trying to change your perspective. When you start to try to change someone else's opinion or perspective or what they feel happened, then you know you're not in the right place, because there's nothing you could do to change someone's mind. They have to be prepared and open to change it on their own. No one's going to do it because you told them so.
Right.
Right. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Like, calm down. Does that work for anybody? No.
Right.
You tell someone to calm down, they're going to tell you, they'll probably be lucky.
How many times have I said to you, I can't have this conversation right now, but that's inflammatory too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's shutting me down.
You feel a certain kind of way. And I'm saying, basically, I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Right. You shut down and you're like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
I can't talk to you about this. Right. I know I've used that.
Yeah.
Right. So recognizing that and worse. Right,
and then that escalates all the way to the top. And you're just like,
we've been in a situation where I've thrown things or you slammed a door. I mean, we've never hit each other in hostility.
No. Yeah.
But the thing about it that we were talking about last night is this whole idea of stopping the escalation, right?
Yeah.
Either one of us, right? In the moment of saying, okay, time out, pause, let's hit the pause button. Why either let's look at why you are being emotionally hijacked. Well, first of all, can we agree that we're both emotionally hijacked?
Well, yeah, and I think I don't know if it's a good idea to say, well, let's look at why you're doing it, because now you're kind of saying you're putting it on someone else.
That's why I said, can we both agree that we may be emotionally hijacked in this moment?
Right. Well, all I can do is, I think in the moment, it's really important to recognize it in yourself.
Right.
To say, I'm feeling some kind of way, and I'm starting to feel like I'm getting angry. I'm getting irritated. I'm no longer looking at this situation with curiosity. I'm starting to feel like I need to defend myself.
Right.
So I don't know. How are you feeling? Check in.
Right. So it's a check-in.
So check in with the other person. Be like, how are you feeling about that? Because I'm not feeling good right now.
Well, when you think about synthesizing all the things we've learned and talked about.
This way you're not placing blame.
Right. What does Mark Brackett teach, right? How are you feeling right now?
Right, exactly.
So if I had stopped in the moment, right, and sense your escalation, and instead of us, butting heads, if I said to you, how are you feeling right now? You could have identified what in that moment?
I could have identified, I could have stopped and been like, I'm feeling a little like I want to punch you in the face.
Well, okay, that's not a feeling.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's
an emotion.
That's a behavior.
No, the feeling is what I want to do.
Right. What? Yeah, but what is the feeling that would make you want to punch me?
Well, the feeling is anger or frustration.
Right.
So that's the feeling. Yeah.
Right. Punching me would be an outlet for your anger or frustration, right? I'm just trying to get to the root cause of why you would want to punch me, right? So you're angry with me, you're frustrated, all those things, right? But why, right? Well, this goes back to the other thing we were doing the other day. But why? Right?
Right. Well, that's the 7 layers of why, which I learned from... Yeah, the
Why are you angry
right
now? What is it that I'm saying to you right now that's leading to, because I don't want to say I'm making you feel. I do believe in personal accountability and responsive emotions. I'm not going to say you made me angry.
Well,
right?
I think...
I got angry because something you said intersected or triggered something in me.
Right, but you have to back up a little. I don't think by you saying, what is it I'm doing that making you do this? That's not something to say. How are you feeling right now? You have to keep it open. Yeah. How are you feeling right now? You can't jump to conclusions and make assumptions about something I'm feeling, because then I'm going to get mad.
No, I'm saying if I'm already past that, right? Because you said you were angry and frustrated. So I'm thinking what I could have done is say, what is it that I'm saying or doing right now is making you feel angry or frustrated?
But now you're assuming it's something you're doing or saying.
I could
Why
say,
don't you just say why?
is there anything I'm doing? Or just why?
Well,
More
just
open-ended.
why, yeah.
Oh, I like that. More open-ended questions, right?
Yeah, you don't want to like, no. The answer is no. I mean, that's a yes or no answer.
Right. We don't want to ask questions.
No, so it's like
yes
either
no.
you're doing it or you're not, right? So what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Nothing. Like, that's what I could say.
Right.
Right? So I close down because now...
I'm not mad at you.
No, I'm not mad at you. I'm fucking fine. But you can just keep it open. Say why. Why do you think you feel that way? Or why are you feeling that way? Or anything. But I think avoid bringing yourself into it.
I like
and
it,
it's so tricky because you fall right into those habits.
Right.
So what we're really talking about are triggers. How do you know you're being triggered? These are triggers. Emotional hijack trigger is the same thing. And that's what they are. And so,
because I'm going to guess, and you can tell me, but from all the conversation we've had, when I questioned you throwing a financial goal out there, it brought up everything you were told in your childhood, that you didn't have value and you weren't going to be able to make money. And all
I can do what I want.
I basically
it's my goal, my plan. I'll do whatever I want. Like, don't tell me what to do.
Right. So
I need control.
So I basically, I went in there and, poured salt in your
you just shit all over my parade, basically.
Yeah.
So,
right. And I get that
that's what
now.
it felt like.
I get that now.
Yeah.
But we both had things, right? And so this is the thing in a relationship. You have two people coming in with, we call it emotional baggage, we call it your inner child, or whatever you want to call it. We're both coming in with things. And I'm saying, so you said something that emotionally hijacked me, and I allowed myself to be emotionally hijacked with a comment, because we do eventually work to get control of it. And then what I said in response got you emotionally hijacked. So we had two emotionally hijacked people.
And it's so hard because when you are triggered or emotionally hijacked, what happens? What happens? What part of your brain takes over and the other part shuts down, right? So the reasonable part of your brain here.
The amygdala, right?
The amygdala, the back.
Maureen's a brain geek. So
I'm like a little
just
bit.
Cross-checking to make sure I got that right. I'm not 100% confident that I was right, but I am though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with Andrew Huberman's Huberman Lab. But I mean, the amygdala takes over, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the part of your brain that kind of controls the emotional center. It's the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Part of your brain. And so, I don't typically flee. I fight. That's kind of my...
That is the brain science behind being emotionally hijacked. Yeah.
So, and this part shuts down. The reasonable part kind of shuts down because when you're emotional, really, that's the, what do they call that part of the brain? It's the oldest part. It's the, not the amphibian. Anyway, but yeah, it's the one that, tells you there's a tiger in the bush, run or fight or kill it.
So what could we have done differently, or what in the future would we try to do differently in a situation where we've both triggered each other's, somewhat negative response?
Right. So what do you do? So I think the minute you recognize it and you feel some kind of way and you start recognizing that you're, feeling like you're getting angry and you're trying to get, like, the words are coming out a little more biting, which I just said a little while ago. Right. I think we have to just be like, you know what? I'm starting to feel some kind of way. I feel like I'm being triggered, or I might be being triggered, or you don't even have to, like, look, if you don't want to even admit you're being triggered, I mean, ideally we wouldn't have any triggers, right? But this is how you get rid of your triggers. So recognizing that they are there and then stopping in the moment and exploring, where is this coming from? How exactly am I feeling? And try to find some language to express how you feel. It's so hard because it's not just happy and sad. There's way more stuff in between, right? So try to find a way to express verbally or in writing how you're feeling. But I think it's really a good point to stop and time out in the conversation and go off in a different direction.
Yeah.
Talk about how you feel. No matter what you're talking about in that moment. We were talking about my goals for 2025 and, how I'm so passionate about helping families with disabilities and with children with disabilities. And of course I have a financial goal. I mean, I'm going to start a new business. So That's important.
And what I heard,
right,
and this is what happens with perspective, right? And perspective is shaped by our experiences or interactions or events, inner
That's your
parts
trigger,
or inner parts, right? What I heard was, I'm just doing this for the money.
Right, and that's a part of you that rose up and took over your higher self and said, that's wrong. And, but it doesn't matter that I spend tons of money out of my own pocket to help the families that I service now, that I practically work for free doing what I do, working for the state because they don't really pay.
Right.
So, and it's Medicaid. And I take a lot of my own time. I even spend extra time. I mean, I'm only supposed to spend an hour, but last week I spent an hour and a half with the family. I didn't charge them for it. I don't get paid for that. So I do give back, and I don't care because to me it's important that they get what they need.
Yeah.
And this mom needed me to be there the extra time, and I don't care. Like if I know I'm helping, I walk away and I feel good about it. But we have bills to pay.
Yeah.
And it's time I valued myself and understood my worth and was able to do this in a greater way and be able to reach more people.
100%. I totally get it. So just to make sure everybody gets what the bottom line is here, it's a strategy, right? When you're having a discussion with your significant other and you're both getting upset, the best course of wisdom is somebody, at least somebody, stops the train.
Right.
And says, let's pause here. Let's check in with how we're feeling. Here's how I'm feeling.
Stop
how are
and
you
check
feeling?
in.
Right?
Yeah, and try to do it. I mean, it's hard but you want to do it before you completely get hijacked.
Yeah.
So you want to do it when you first notice that you're getting upset. And the thing is, so now here's another thing I just thought of. When you're talking, like you and I are more like so in sync that I can tell you, I have to put a time out right now because I'm feeling some kind of way. But there are other couples that may not be, their parts are completely taking over, right? So I'm talking about parts, and I'm talking about the higher self in terms of the internal family systems model, which is something you could look up. It's Dick Schwartz wrote the book on it. He kind of developed this model. It's a beautiful model, and it really does help you understand how you can become triggered. Because there's a part of you that existed when you were a child that protected you from whatever you had experienced in your environment. And as you grew older, that part's still there, that part that's protecting that small child. So, and I'm not going to go too crazy into this, but so there are parts. So the part of me that felt like I'm not enough, like I have no confidence, I have no value, all is being triggered from the way I grew up. Right. And that part, and there's many parts, but that particular part sits in me and tells me you can't do this, or gives me a panic attack when I'm in a meeting, or makes it very difficult for me to focus on what I want to say because I'm scrambling to find something intelligent to say. Meanwhile, I have plenty to say. I just get, tongue tied in a meeting because I get anxious and nervous. Like if what I'm going to say is going to be considered stupid or I'm going to embarrass myself. Right. So, and this is what happens. And I think it's really important that if you're with a partner whose parts are running the show, it'll be very hard to just say, look, let's take a time out. I'm feeling some kind of way. They may respond to you and get angry and be like, you're shutting me down, and continue to try to trigger you because they don't realize what you're trying to do is stop the emotional hijack from happening and take back your emotions and keep your higher self in charge. So be mindful of that. I think there's a lot of people out there that may not have that level of communication yet. But for yourself, if you could remember that, you could explain it and just say, look, and come at it with curiosity and love. So when your partner gets upset, you can then pull back and start using the why questions. Why do you think you feel that way? Why do you feel like I'm shutting you down? Without defending yourself.
Right.
Don't say, why do you feel like I'm shutting you down? Because I'm trying to do this, this, and this, or because I realize I'm feeling a certain kind of way. Because as soon as you start providing a response to that, like a defense, they're in defense.
That's where the behaviors get in the way, right? Being defensive. judging either your own feelings or someone else's.
Yeah.
Or trying to explain, which, is kind of part of defensiveness.
Super important to try to hold on to that curiosity space and the non-judgmental space. Because obviously you're with your partner, you love them, they love you. Nobody wants to hurt each other. But when you're being triggered and that part is coming up and taking over, it's very hard to pull back and see, the sky beyond the clouds, so to speak.
Yeah, I think about how many times you said, are you intentionally trying to piss me off? No, I would never do that. I've never done that. But I guess it can feel that way because I'm saying something that you've said to me, like, hey, you should know that bothers me. And I remember that coming up one time we were sitting on the patio, and you said, I can't believe you said that. You should know that bothers me. And I said, you know what? It's not hitting the same for me because this topic doesn't trigger me. Obviously, it triggers you, though. So,
obviously, you can't read my mind. Right? We can look into that. You can't read each other's minds.
Right.
But, I think that's another thing. It's another tricky space to enter with a partner because you expect them to know you, right? So certain things are triggering for me, especially when it comes to childhood trauma, when it comes to something happening to a child. A child getting hurt, anything. Like, I'm not going to bring up the things, but there are certain things that you absolutely know I can't handle emotionally, like a news story.
Right.
And stuff. So I think you were talking about a news story, something that happened in that line. And I was like, and I immediately became angry and like, I could feel myself wanting to just reach across and just do something violent. Like the violence, the rage rose up inside of me.
I remember.
And I was like, I couldn't stop it. And this is something I have to work on because it's a very strong trigger for me, but it has to do with children being hurt or something, and I can't handle, I can't handle abuse and neglect around children. And I know it goes on and it happens and it breaks my heart. And I'm in a field where, I see it. But it's very difficult. And I've learned to separate myself, do what I can do, and separate myself as much as I can from situations like that, because otherwise I just will go down a really bad rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But that's a really tricky place to be, especially when you have a trigger that's strong. So when you assume your partner knows your triggers and he's talking about something or she's talking about something and you're like, why the fuck would you bring that up to me? It's like a slap in my face. Or are you trying to piss me off? Like, what are you doing right now? You can't see that they honestly didn't realize that it was something that was going to upset you. Because I don't believe you would do that to me. And I know now, I know you wouldn't, but I was like, what? Like, I couldn't get out of my own way. So that's a tricky space to navigate. It really is. So just recognize, I came fast. Like my rage flies if I let it. Like I'm getting better. But like, what was that, a couple of years ago we were sitting here? Or it wasn't that long ago.
It was back in the summer. So, but still, you grow and learn, right? But now I'm aware. So the more you become aware, I think awareness is everything. You have these triggers, you know what your triggers are. So I think the more you become aware of that. Do you though? That's the thing. I don't think you always do. Not you particularly, but because I don't think in general people always know what their triggers are.
No, they may not know because they might come across something they never experienced before and suddenly they're triggered by it.
Right.
It could be a word. It could be a smell.
We've done some really years of therapy work, right?
Yeah.
And you're working through the internal family systems type of therapy
and
today.
I've had a couple of really amazing trauma therapists to help me, like Marsha Mandel in New York. She does ART, Accelerated Resolution Therapy, up in Cornwall, New Windsor now. She's amazing. She kind of helped me, showed me the way. Like she helped me get so much further. I was in therapy for probably 25 years. I was in therapy for 3 months with her, and I got further in 3 months than I did in 25 years of cognitive behavior therapy. That's not to say cognitive behavior therapy is bad, but I needed something for trauma specifically. I need a trauma specific therapist. They don't use CBT in that way, right? Sometimes it's good, but not for trauma. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's good for trauma because then you're just kind of reliving it over and over again. Who needs to talk about that over and over again? Like it didn't help me. So you need somebody who has a tool or several strategies to get you. It's like changing your neural network, right? So it stops the response from the brain going to that
Changing
part of the body.
Internal dialogue.
Yeah, going to that part of the body that triggers the response, and you feel it in your body. And then I have down here, I have Patty Montanino. So she's amazing, and I've been working with her. So I think you really do need that, and that's where really my awareness began.
And I still love the analogy I thought about months ago about hidden triggers, right? Because something may have happened to us a very long time ago and we buried it or forgot about it, and it's dormant and it gets activated and it goes crazy. And if you, again, I'm going to use that analogy to the War of the Worlds movie with Tom Cruise from about 20 years ago, right? You know, you have these machines that are buried deep underground, and you have this lightning bolt of electricity. It sends the person, the alien inside the ship to wake that ship up, and then it starts destroying everything around it. But these hidden emotions, right? This past emotional trauma is like this thing that's buried deep 20 years, 30 years ago, who knows for people. And then something external, right, is activating it, and all of a sudden it's wreaking havoc on the person with whom the trauma is laying dormant within, and then the people who are around that person. So, in closing, right, trying to wrap this up, that being able to say, you know what, maybe there's something coming up here that I'm not familiar with, right?
Yeah, well, human beings are very good at burying these things.
It's time
we could bury them well. And then suddenly, boom, they pop up in your adult life.
It's time to pause, right? Because if we don't pause, this thing's going to go around. It's going to destroy. It can, literally, buried traumas can destroy people, can destroy yourself, right? If it's in you, can destroy a relationship that you have. It can destroy, it can cause you to lose your job. I've known people, we know people that
have lost their job,
have tons of emotional triggers, and they think everyone else is the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And everything everybody else does, whether it's family members, employers, triggers them, gets them angry, and they blame everybody else. And they go around being angry every day, right? Yeah. And then they drink and they self-medicate, and they take drugs, or they smoke, right? And all these things are self-injurious, risky behaviors, right? That people do when they have trauma. Yeah. And this is why if you're in a relationship and you have the trauma, or everybody's got trauma of some kind.
Something, yeah. I wouldn't say everybody, but most people, nobody had perfect childhoods. Somewhere along the line,
I don't mean that your trauma is caused by your parents.
Human
there's different
experience,
things, experiences, right? Sometimes that can be triggering. And if you don't have any triggers at all, that's great. I think that's a practice we'd all like to get to. But recognizing that in yourself and others is the first step, and say, I think there's something else at work here.
Right.
Do you feel comfortable exploring that? Right. And the other person says, I don't want to explore anything. Well, okay. You do you. Right. We can't solve for, but if you're in a committed relationship with somebody and they don't want to explore anything,
you need to look at that.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, you need to look at that.
But then what are you going to do?
Well, you work on yourself.
You're going to work on yourself.
And when you work on yourself, you'll find your way. And if that means, start there, work on yourself, find your way, whatever the buttons that you want to push, whatever you want to call it, pushing your buttons, getting triggered, emotional hijacking, they're all the same thing. When you're, if you're in a relationship, that person does not, and he was like, no, I'm not talking about that. So you need to look at yourself and be like, okay, how can I be better? Right. How can I do this? And as you develop and grow and evolve, you may evolve away from that relationship, or that person might come around and be like, you know what? Let's look at this. Right. I love you, and let's look at this. But you can't control anybody else's response. You can only control your own and your own growth and development.
And it goes back to the thing we constantly say: when we change the world within us, we change the world around us. And that doesn't always mean that the world around us is going to change in a way that
we change it in the way the people who react, how we respond to people, because you respond differently. They're going to respond differently to you.
Right. But it may not be unicorn and rainbows. And to your point, you may change, and you may be in a relationship with somebody and they don't, right? And and the relationship ends. But that's a change.
Yeah, Esther Perel said very clearly, if you want to change the way someone's responding to you, you need to change.
Right.
the way you're talking to them.
It all starts with you.
Right. You need to change the way you're interacting with them. When you change, they're going to change the way they respond to you. It's all about, you have to be accountable for this.
Change, maybe they're not in your life anymore, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people really want friendships and other things, and I heard we were at an event yesterday and somebody was talking about, I may have to come to terms with the idea that certain people shouldn't be in my life anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're changing and you're working on yourself and other people aren't, and those may not be the right people for you anymore.
So here's what we need to do. We're going to wrap this up. You're going to do two things coming into the new year. You're going to figure out on a 3x5 index paper, you're going to write down and think about what it is you want to let go of and what it is you want to manifest for 2025. Do that.
And that's part of working on yourself. And we're going to talk about that next time.
And follow us.
We are going to come back on New Year's Eve, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail and setting the intention for the new year. So stay tuned, and we'll talk to you shortly.